Hello, I am Addison Morse, the founder of the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, and this is Cannabis Clip Notes presented by Esmeralda Tinoco, who is a commercial insurance advisor with World Insurance Associates. World Insurance Associates is a unique insurance organization offering top products and services from all major carriers combined with personal services from local professionals. World Insurance Associates specializes in personal and commercial insurance lines, surety and bonding, employee benefits, financial planning, retirement planning, and human capital management solutions. They cater to specialized industries, including the cannabis industry. One of the most important things that any business can have is a workman's compensation policy in place. So, can you explain to us exactly what workers' compensation is?
Yeah, Addison, thank you for having me on. So, before we get into any of the specifics of the cannabis industry, let's just start by explaining what a workers' compensation policy is. So, workers' comp is a policy that covers employees who get injured or sick while on the job. This policy would cover any of the medical bills, lost wages, or rehab costs are covered. In return, businesses are protected from any lawsuits related to workplace injuries. Now, why is this so important for the cannabis industry specifically? Well, as we all know, cannabis operations are not like traditional businesses and they come with their unique risks. So, cultivation workers are dealing with heavy lifting, pesticides, and repetitive motion injuries. Extraction labs have fire and explosion risk, and dispensary employees face security concerns and even robbery threats. All of these risks is to no surprise of why insurance providers see the cannabis business as a high risk. And if you don't have the right coverages in place, you're not just violating state laws, but you're also putting your employees and your operation at risk. Now, compliances and legal requirements for this do vary by state. Um, each state has its own regulations governing workers' compensation insurance. Generally, most states do mandate employers to have this. Here in Missouri, the rule is really if you have 5 employees or more, you are required to have a workman's comp policy in place. Now, if you're in the construction side of things, this does change. And after your first employee, you are required to carry a policy. Uh, Whether you run a dispensary, a grow operation, or a processing facility, your employees are always going to have an exposure to risk. And if you're not covered, then your business could be in some serious trouble. Now, what happens if you don't comply? Well, fines and legal penalties for this would be just the beginning of all of your problems. If an employee were to get injured and you don't have coverage, you would be looking at massive out of pocket costs. We're talking lawsuits, medical expenses, and even potential business shutdowns. So it's not really worth the risk that you've been working so hard on your business just to give it all away. An example of this, let's just say that a cultivation facility has an employee who's trimming plants and they suffer a severe cut to their hand from a sharp tool. The injury would require stitches, follow up, care, and it would leave the worker unable to perform their duties for several of weeks. Now, if the employer were to not have a workers' comp policy in place, that means that they would be facing out of pocket medical expenses, a potential lawsuit, and even reputational risk. I mean, unsolved injury claims could damage the employer's reputation within the industry and among other employees that work for him. Now, if they were to have a workers' comp policy in place, this would take care of all of the medical expenses, the wage replacement, and it would protect the employer from any lawsuit that would come up from this injury. Um, and it doesn't just help you because it's required by the state, but it also gives you a good name, and your employers or your employees would really appreciate and feel safer and more valued knowing that their employer has a policy in place, which would lead to better productivity and lower turnover. Now, how do you figure out how you get the right coverage? So, the first thing that you should be doing is you should be working with an insurance provider that understands the cannabis industry. Not all insurers will touch cannabis businesses, so you need to be partnering up with someone who knows and understands the risk and regulatory challenges that come with this. Someone that's going to be able to even help you implement some workplace safety programs. The safer your business, the lower the risk, and the better your insurance rate is going to be. And finally, you should be staying on top of compliances, and laws are evolving. So you need to make sure that your policies are really up to date. One question that we get all of the time is, how is the premium calculated? So three big factors really go into this, which would be your payroll, classification code, and your experience mod. Now, insurance carriers base rates on every $100 of payroll for each employee or job type. Um, Another thing would be the classification rate. Every job is based on how risky it is, and this is actually a code that's given by the NCCI. So a bud tender might be classified to a low to moderate risk, while a cultivation worker or trimmer might be a higher rate due to the physical labor and the repetitive motion that they're doing. A delivery driver or a security guard is even a higher risk due to the driving and just the potential exposure to any confrontation. Rates vary by state and carrier and are typically expressed by a dollar amount. Now, the experience mod, that would be kind of like your claims history score. So it reflects how your business is doing in comparison to other businesses with the same classification code. One would be the average for this. Now, if you're below a one, that's better than average, and that would give you a discount. If you're above one, that probably means that you have some claims that come up in your history, and that's a surcharge. It's basically a reward or penalty system based on how safe your workplace is. Now, something that you really do need to keep in mind is the audit that you're going to be getting at the end of your policy period. So this doesn't take you by surprise. It's required by law for all workers' comp policies, whether you're in cannabis or not, to be audited. The cannabis industry is such a fast-moving industry that you might scale up and staff during harvest or launch a new product mid-year. You might have some seasonal trimmers, contractors, or move employees between departments. So what happens after your audit? There's two possible outcomes that can come from this. Now, you could either get a bill or you could get a refund. If your actual payroll or exposure comes out to be higher than when you anticipated when you first wrote your policy, that means that you would owe more premium. Now, let's say it's the other way around and you actually get a have a lower payroll at the end of the year than what you thought you were going to be doing, then you would get money back. Now, keep in mind that this isn't always the case. If you are starting up and there's a minimum policy premium, then you probably won't be getting a refund. But this is why it's so important to estimate your payroll honestly and keep clean and organized records of everything that you have going on during the year. Workers' comp isn't just another box to check. It's a crucial part of running a responsible and successful cannabis business. By protecting your employees, you're protecting not only yourself, but also your company and your company's future. But that's it for workers' compensation today. If you have any questions regarding this, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and my information is also on this site. But thank you, Addison, for having me on.
Well, thank you. And this Cannabis Clip Notes is also available on the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce website and YouTube channel and all our social media. This is part one of a series, so please go back and revisit this and stay up to date on what type of insurance and what it covers.